Good morning, everyone. I have started recording. Now, the topic that we have shared that day, right? If you take a look, let me bring that page. So I'm going to go there. So here, local host, and backend testing app, right? In this backend testing app, to run this backend testing app, basically when you run it, what do you see? You see some information, right? So basically most of the practical computer application, most of the practical computer application, like whatever that small app is displaying the purpose, right? What it is doing, can you explain what this app is doing that I'm running here? This app is showing data that is stored somewhere. Where are these data stored? The app, that it is the data that it is showing, where this data is coming from. Sharmin, where this data is coming from? Can you talk like this data that we are seeing here, right? Where is the source of this data? Jaman, do you know like where the source of this data is?
Would you say that it's on a database server? Or
Yeah.
Okay.
So this data is in a database, and that application is reading the data from the database, and it is showing that data, right? It is showing that data. Now, so if you take a look, while it is showing this data, right? Can you see this data is displayed here, but the code for this, the code, right? The code for this particular app is here. Let me see. Let me bring it. Let me see if I can bring it. Okay. Let me open that file where we have code for this. I think index, right? If you take a look in this particular, this is the code for that application that it is being displayed in the browser, right? If you take a look here, you will see that. Can you see? Select star from test table, right? So to display this data, to display this data, this application here is executing a query, this query. Select star from test table. So when you do your testing as a tester, you will have to do that type of SQL query. You will have to execute that type of SQL query to pull data, to update data, to delete data from database. So we, in the second half of the class today, we will be discussing a little bit of this database, Oracle database. Okay.
I'm disconnected for a while.
Oh, okay, okay, no problem. Yeah. Can you hear me now clearly, Sharmin? Sharmin, can you hear me now clearly? Okay, so we, what we will do is we will execute query, we will write query to retrieve data from the database. So that we'll do today. But before I go to that, we have already discussed few things regarding, okay, how software development works, right? How software development works. We have discussed software architecture, right? How the software architecture works. We have discussed a requirement document. So these three document we have had a few discussion, right? So one of the document that we have discussed is that software development architecture, this document. Okay. Now, this architecture, if I bring this architecture document, right, on this architecture document, Sharmin, can you hear me now? Can you explain this architecture document, software architecture, application architecture document?
Simplest way that I've understood is so if I'm the client who's using Gmail, so once I type on the credential and then I would send it and the application server matches the credential with the credential that's already stored in the database. And so if it matches, then I would be able to use the application.
I'll be able to use my application, or I'll be able to use my email, right? So from like your laptop, from where your laptop or mobile device, from where you are submitting your login, that login is going to the application server of the Gmail, and application server sends this request to the database server to make sure that the information that you have submitted is correct, and if the information is correct, right, then you are able to access your email. Okay, so this is the basic architecture of the application. Now let me go back to discuss a few more things. I have also provided you a simple test case, right? Have you looked at that test case? How does it look like? The test case that we have sent, right? Were you able to look at it, and how does it look like? Have you understood what are the key parts of a test case?
Looked at it. For some reason, even last time when I actually took the course, test cases were a little, I'm not sure why, but it was a little confusing to me.
Okay, we will be discussing further. We will be writing a lot of test cases here. Basically, a test case is a step-by-step description of how you test the application, how you test an application, a computer application. And in the test case, basically, you write your step-by-step to test a particular application, and you have, first of all, you have a action column where you say, okay, do this, or open this page, or click on this button, right, or click on the download link. You say the action. There is a action column where you say this, and let's say when you click on a link, when you say, okay, click on this link, what is your expectation, right? So there will be a column with expected output. Okay, when you click on this link, a new page will be opened. You say something like this, and that's all. Basically, your action and your expected behavior from the application. And if that expected behavior, if you do not see, sometimes, like, if you do not see the expected behavior, you'll have to note down what behavior you see, right? So for that one, you have a actual behavior column. Okay, you have a actual behavior column. Okay, and then, yeah, expected behavior, actual behavior, and then if you have to report a defect, there is a column for the defect number. So if you take a look, let me bring that particular test case that I have sent to you, right? Let me bring this. Okay, so if you take a look, right, in a test case, basically you have a step description, your expected result column. Basically that's all. Step description, expected result, and sometimes you will have your actual result, and pass or fail. Let's say that your expectation is input email to text box and click next. When you input email to text box and click next, password text box will be displayed. If password text box doesn't appear, then you have to write, okay, what appeared, Okay, let's say password text box didn't display, instead something else displayed. You write it here and you mark this step as a failed. If you have any further comment, you put it here. So this is basically like to test an application step by step. And we are going to have further discussion, but does it make sense to you, Sharmina? Okay. So if I ask you like, hey, can you explain like what is a test case and how will you explain it now?
Okay, so basically what you said, test cases are step-by-step procedure um, on I guess how we test something.
Test something.
So test cases are our actions, what we are expecting versus the outcome. On it, we basically write the procedure, and then we, on the next box, we write that what would be the expected result, and then in terms of the actual outcome, if it does as the test case is written, then I guess we'll say it worked. If it didn't, we'll say it failed. So, but my question, not my question, but I guess my concern is that as you explain it, I understand it, but when I try writing it myself, somehow mess up.
Yeah, we will write a few test cases in the session, right? You will write it. I'll show you how you write it, and then definitely you will have more information and you will be able to write it. But we have a lot of time. Like we have to discuss few other things before we go for writing test case. As of now, fundamental understanding. Okay, what is test case? What do I need for a test case? A test case is a step-by-step description to test an application, and what do I include in the test case? I include test step number, I include action or step description, I include expected result, actual result, pass, fail. That's all. These are the main columns that we have in a test case. Okay, if you understand up to this, we'll be discussing further later. All right, so we have a brief discussion on this test case, and then basically another key understanding that I'm expecting from you is this. Let me bring that document. SDLC, how it works. Let me see what do I have here. Okay, we have discussed this particular SDLC, right? How SDLC works. Now, does any of you have any question on this, how this application works in terms of who are the different people involved, how do they work? Do you have any question?
Good.
Okay, can anyone explain what are the different environment involved in software development?
Yeah, sure. The QA environment would be like sort of like a set of servers that the code is deployed to test the software. The development environment would be just for the software developers, and and simply they will use that environment to see their code in action, because if it is without executing the code, they can't see it. A pre-production environment is essentially when the software or the application is almost done, and this is where performance testing happens, where they test the application with a load. So, for example, if there's a site, they want to test and see if it can handle 2,000 users or so. And then production environment is essentially the environment where it's a server where the final product is delivered to or deployed to for consumer use.
Yep. So in the development environment, the developers develop the product, right? They see the software in action in the development environment. In the QA environment, right? In the QA environment, like they deploy the code for the QA tester to test the application, right? That is where QA tester does their testing. And in the pre-production environment, as you said, we do mass level testing. We put like if the requirement is the software will have to be working fine with 1000 users, so we apply 1000 users and see how the software behaves, right? So in the production environment is the place from where customers access the application. Now Sharmeen or Jaman, do you have any experience like you are trying to use an application, it is extremely slow? Do you have something like this that you have experienced?
Absolutely.
Can you give me an example? Okay, situation where you are trying to use an application and you saw that it is extremely slow.
The property management software that we use for our hotel.
Mm-hmm.
It was developed by this company called Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
And the first year that it came on, oh my god, there's like a list of obviously in a hotel,
Mm-hmm.
there are reservations for that day.
Mm-hmm.
That would take a long time to load. There would be many times where it would crash.
Mm-hmm.
So many bugs, like it was insane. But yeah.
So that means like you have a good experience of using a bad software.
Yes. Many bad softwares.
You saw that the application was behaving pretty slow. You saw that the page will be crashed, right? And a lot of problem with that application. And then were they able to fix those problem and finally the application?
Yeah. After a year, they actually fired their project manager. And then once the new project manager came in, it's all been fixed. Obviously, like any other software, there are problems here and there. But as soon as there was a bug, they do system updates and system maintenance. So
Got it. Okay.
knock on wood. Hopefully, it stays that way.
Got it. So the problem could be that software, right? Whoever has developed that software, they didn't QA tested this application properly. Number one, they didn't do any performance testing. Okay, so let's say that when you develop a software in the development environment, right? Then basically you do it. The development is, a small set of people access this application. Only the developers or QA tester people, right? And when you put that application in the production, basically it a lot of people will be accessing it versus few developers and QA testers. If you when you put that software in the production, then a lot of customers, a lot of client will be accessing this application, right? Now when you access an application, when many people access an application, right, then obviously, like as I said, the software is hosted in some server somewhere, right? Didn't I say that? Now every people, right, every people access a software. Each people, basically, when you access a software, for you create a session in those servers. Let's say that for your hotel application, there are 4 or 5 servers somewhere in San Francisco or LA or New York or in England, somewhere there are 4, 5 or 10 servers that is supporting your application, for example, right? Now, so when, like, let's say you have 100 hotel brands, or you have 1000 hotel brands. From everywhere they will be accessing the this software, and there is a particular peak time of the day when most of the people will be check in, check out, right? Let's say around 12. Most of the people will be check in and check out, and it will be most busy on that time. Is that correct? Let's say, for example, this is a situation. Now, when people, when a people access this software, for this guy, there will be a session in the server. Now, let's say that each session, let's say that each session, like when you open, as you can see my screen, right? As you can see my screen, let's say that, let me close few of the things. Understand, this is a key understanding part. So before I say that, when you learn automation, you will be seeing, okay, you will be writing that type of code. You will see that if condition, else condition, right? You will be writing this type of code basically, but it is later. Now let me close this. And let's say that, let me close this as well. Okay, let me close some other thing. Software, yeah, we have this. Okay, so let's say that if you go to your task manager, I can type here, it seems. For some reason, let me close few other things. Let me close this one as well. I need a little bit of space here. Let me close this one. Let me close this one as well. Okay, so if I click here and if I bring task manager, right, then you will see that, can you see that I have, in terms of CPU, 37%, 29%, right? In terms of memory, I have 57% memory consumed. In terms of disk, I have that much consumed, right? Can you see these uses? Okay, so when you see that 57% memory used, right? 57% memory used. What does this mean? Okay, what does this mean? If you come here, and then can you see this PC? If you right click on this PC and click on properties, can you see that I have 12 gigabyte memory in that laptop, right? I have how many gigabyte? 12 gigabyte of memory in this laptop. Is that correct? Now, out of 12 gigabyte memory, right, as you can see that, you see that I have a XAMPP control running. I have other softwares or other processes running here. Some of them are Windows process. I'm running Camtasia. Can you see the Camtasia that is recording? It is taking 39.8 megabyte of memory, right? Every process I'm running, let's say I'm running this XAMPP control, right? It is taking 7.7 megabyte of memory. I'm running Skype. It is taking 369 megabyte of memory. Okay. Then we have discussed something called this software testing lifecycle, STLC, right? Software testing lifecycle. Can anyone explain me, okay, what are the different component that you have seen in software testing lifecycle?
the life cycle would be when the requirements come through. Let me just look through my notes before I can try to say something.
Okay.
It's when all the requirements are, I guess, written down and designed and everything. It goes through test planning. Just give me a second.
Yeah, let me see how about much you can explain.
The exact words for it, but I'm assuming it'll be once the test cases are, when the requirement documents come through, and then the test cases are written and planned, and then it goes for, I guess, analyzing the request.
So when you like the way it works, right? In software testing lifecycle, you get the requirements, right? You analyze the requirements. When the tester get the requirement document, right? They analyze the requirement, and after analyzing the requirement, they prepare the test plan, right? And after preparing the test plan, they start writing test cases, and once the environment is ready, code is deployed, right? They do the test execution, and after test execution, they report the, if there is any defect or anything, they do the reporting. Basically, that's all in the software testing lifecycle. You got it? So what we do, we analyze the requirement, and then we prepare the test plan. We write our test cases or test scripts, right? When the environment is there, when the code is there, we prepare our, we do our testing, we execute our test cases, right? If there is any defect, if there is any problem in the functionality, we report defect, right? And finally, we show the result. Okay, like we prepare a summary report and we display the result. Okay, now, so this is STLC, software testing lifecycle. Now, in this software testing lifecycle, right? In this software testing lifecycle, what is the activity? Like we are dependent on some other things. What is our dependencies here? Can anyone explain me, like, if there is any dependency here, that we are dependent on something? Can you explain?
Do you mean like if we're dependent on a different type of team, like the
Yeah,
development team?
we are dependent on different type of teams. We are dependent on documents. So what are the dependencies?
The first team that we would be dependent on are the product managers, and not the project or product managers, as well as the business analysts. The business analysts are going to essentially, they're, I would say, are one of the most major dependents, simply because they're the ones that create the BRD. And once the BRD is made, so is the FRD and the use cases. So we're dependent on that. And then when the software development team, when they get those documents and they create a test design and then that they start writing code, we're dependent on them to deploy the code to a test server so we can test it. Let's see, we're dependent on the person that's charged of the test planning to see, like what to test, the test estimations and just essentially the test plan includes, it's like a major schedule of the testing that will be done, and then we're dependent on the test cases itself because those are the steps that we need to take to actually test the software. I'm not sure if that's
you are right. So there are a few external dependency and there are few internal dependency, right? If you classify few external dependency, those will be like we have to get the requirement document, right? Without the requirement document, like it is difficult for us to start test planning and writing test cases, right? We have to have some kind of knowledge to start working on. This is one. Another core dependency is the developers will have to develop the code and the code will have to be deployed in the appropriate environment for the QA tester to execute test cases and test the application. Right? These are the two core dependency or external dependency. And in the meantime, internal dependency, we'll have to prepare our test plan, we'll have to allocate, resources, and we'll have to do what? We'll have to write test cases so that we can test the application, right? So that's how it goes. And if I ask you, okay, what are the products from our testing? What are the products that we produce?
From our testing? Is this like after we follow the test cases and stuff like that? Or after we essentially a product that we produce would be a report. It could be a defect report, something that shows if there were any sort of bugs. We can produce like a document that shows our results from the test cases, and then we can also, essentially just pretty much reports. That's all I'm thinking.
So basically, like after testing the test cases, if there is any defect, we report the defect. So one of the product that we produce is the defect, and then when the testing is done, we prepare a report showing, okay, how many test cases we have tested, how many defects we have found, right? What is our overall findings, right? We prepare a report and send it to the project management group and other associated groups. So that is what basically the production. We do not make the application as a tester. We do not make the application, but we test the application, right? Does it make sense, everyone? Okay, so now remember that we had I have sent you a document that is we are calling requirement document. That requirement document, on that particular requirement document, I said the most important part for us is the product features. That was 2.2, right? That requirement document that I have sent you, right? Product features. This is the basically, okay, this application will have this features, this functionalities. So when you write your test cases, you analyze these product features and then you write your test cases, right? Do you remember this? This is a requirement document that we were discussing. Okay, good. So then there is another thing that software, besides software testing lifecycle, there is a software development methodology that we will have to understand. So two key software development methodology that we are going to understand and learn and will face questions during the interviews, okay, is waterfall model and the agile model. Okay, what are the two key software development methodology, guys? One is waterfall model, another one is agile methodology. So you saw that software testing life cycle, right? This is what we are calling software development life cycle and software development methodologies. Okay, and what are the two key software development methodology that is being followed in the application in the different software industry at the moment? What are the names that I mentioned?
Waterfall method and the agile method.
Waterfall methodology and agile methodologies. Okay, in waterfall methodology, like if you can imagine, right, in waterfall what happens, water falls from the top of the mountain to the all the way to the bottom of the mountain, right? When the water is down there, you do not have a way to pump up that water, that big amount of water to the top of the mountain again, right? So once the water is fallen from the mountain, it is fallen, it will be flowing down. So since similarly in waterfall methodology, right, as you can see, it will be the process, overall process will be following downward. Okay, in waterfall methodology, first of all there will be, we'll be analyzing, like they will be analyzing requirements and they will design, right? They will do the design work and they will write code to implement the software, and then testing will happen, which we are calling verification. And once the verification is done, code will be going to the production and maintenance will happen. So in waterfall methodology, the way it works, so the overall requirement, they will prepare the overall requirements, and then once the requirements is done, totally done, it is locked. When design will be happening, then they will no longer change anything in the requirement. So when requirements are done, when design will be started, according to that norm, there will be no change in the requirement because it is locked already. And then when design will be done, when they will start implementation, then this design is locked. That design is locked and there will be no change. And during the verification, right, they will verify functionality. If there is any problem in the functionality, they will do change and modify, and then finally when verification is done, the product will be go to production. So it is like, it is, the process is kind of like, once one step is done, that step is locked, the next functionality will start. When that functionality is done, it is locked, the following functionality will start. In that way the process happens. In that process, right, let me, like, still a lot of organization follow this waterfall methodology. Even where I work, we have a lot of project in, following waterfall methodology. We do the whole requirement analysis, and then whole designing is done, and then whole implementation is done, and then verification happens and it goes to the production. That is what we are calling waterfall methodology. Now if you take a look few key features of the waterfall methodology, can anyone read these key features? If you can, Sharmin, can you read these key features for me? Can you read the first feature?
Earlier, making sure requirements and design are correct.
Okay, so what they will do, can you see? They will spend enough time here to make sure that, okay, everything is there, so that they will say like it is like this. Hey, I'm giving you time, make sure that you have everything you need. And later on when design starts, if you go there, hey, we need to change a requirement, they will say, I gave you time to finalize thing, but what have you done on that time? So it is that kind of thing. They will spend enough time in the beginning to make sure that the requirements of designer correct, and then once they start the development, basically if you go there and if you want to change anything, they will say no, it is not possible. Okay, can you read that second point?
This 100% complete and absolutely correct before proceeding to the next phase.
Make sure each phase is 100% complete and absolutely correct before proceeding to the next phase, as I said, right? Third one,
Requirements should be set in stone before design begins.
so set in stone means, let's say if you set something in stone, what does this mean? That means like it is in stone, you cannot change it, right? So that is what they are saying. Everything is set in stone, you cannot change it. And then yeah, again the similar thing, the program's design should be perfect before people design to begin to implement the design. So before implementing the design will have to be perfect. Okay, and then excellent technical documentation is part of the deliverables and easier for new programmers to get up to speed during the maintenance phase. So in this particular, as you can see, we are making sure that everything is properly documented. When everything is documented, like you know that like a tester in the group, he will not be working in that group forever. So in software team, the developer changes job, the BA is their change job, that test analyst their change job. When someone is gone, when they hire a new people, they will get adequate documentation and they will be able to easily pick up with the, since you have adequate documentation, they will be able to follow the document and quickly pick up to the project. Design errors are captured before any software is written, saving time during the implementation phase. So design is done, well done, and it is totally verified, so that if there is any issue, it is being catch up, it is being caught during the before implementation starts. The approach is very structured and it is easier to measure progress by reference to clearly defined milestones. There will be clearly defined milestones. Okay, we want to do this by this date, this by this date, right? So everything is clearly defined. Milestones are clear. Project teams, everyone is aware that okay, that is what we have to achieve. The total cost of the project can be accurately estimated after the requirements have been defined. So in this way, uh, okay, total costing of the project is easily you can measure, right? Because everything is clear in the beginning. There is nothing in the shadow that you cannot see of or you cannot think of. So that's why more accurately you can measure the cost of the project. Okay, you understand the key feature of the waterfall methodology, guys? Okay, and you saw that design, right? Okay, now here they are saying testing is easier as it can be done by reference to the scenarios and defined in the functional specification. Since everything is good documented, right, the testers will be easily able to prepare the test cases and testing will be easier because everything is clearly defined, right? So disadvantages, there are few disadvantages with this waterfall methodology. As you can see that here, if they're like, if in modern business, right, you will see that even though we have analyzed, there will be a lot of change. The business, the functionality, the people's behavior, everything change here. So change is not welcome in waterfall methodology. So this is a big problem, right? In the beginning, right? In the beginning of the project, even let's say someone need an application, right? In the beginning, they even do not know what core functionality, like what are the details of the functionality. So they might be changing their mind. Okay, I do not want this functionality in that way, I want it in the other way. So it is difficult in this type of situation, right? So changing is discouraged here. A project can often take substantially longer to deliver than when developed with an iterative methodology such as agile method, right? Okay, so so here the key disadvantage for this waterfall methodology is changes are not welcome, right? Changes are not welcome, but the good thing is uh, here you have everything in the beginning. You sort out everything. You sort out everything in the beginning. Up. You sort out everything in the beginning, and people will have to you know, will not have to be in suspense. Okay, what is going to happen, and like those kind of thing is clear in the beginning. Disadvantage is changes are not welcome, and which is required in some cases, right, in modern software development methodologies, right? But it is kind of discouraged in this waterfall methodology. Okay, this is what waterfall methodology is about. So what if I ask you what is the advantage, right? If you can summarize this advantage and can say 2-3 lines, that is all. Okay, now let's go to the agile methodology. So in agile methodology, right, agile development delivers a working application free of all known bugs at the end of each development iteration. So here is iteration. Okay, remember this word, iteration. So here that they divide the work in small part, and each part they develop, they design, they develop, they test, and they fix defect, right? In that way they develop the software, they make the component basically, and then they develop, like each of the component they keep adding up, and the software get fully prepared. Now if you take a look here, right, so every time there will be initial requirement, high level use cases, high level planning, and then here there will be, it will be circling, it will be circling, and as I said, a small part of the code will be done, and then it will be tested, and then it will be evaluated. It will be, if there is any change, right, it will be done, and then it will be going to the production, and then, you know, another piece of the development will be started, right? When you say iteration n, that means iteration 1, iteration 2, iteration 3, iteration up to n. So by this iteration the software will be done, and when, let's say that when everything is done, everything is developed, there will be final testing, and then the product will be go to the production, the product will be released. So here we will be taking a look of some other diagram that we have soon, but what are the, like, before I go to even advantages and disadvantages, let me go to few other things that I'm going to discuss in this software development methodologies. Okay, so if you take a look here, right, waterfall methodology versus agile methodology, right? Let me bring this image. As you can see from here, okay, waterfall, you analyze requirement, you design, you implement, verification, goes to production, maintenance. In agile, right, we do planning, we do design and development, we do testing. After testing, it goes for deployment, right? And then there is a feedback they are saying, and then again, like when we are saying, okay, can you see, we analyze. Let's say we have 20 requirements, right? Out of the 20 requirements, we start with 5 requirements. We analyze, we plan, we design and develop, we do testing, all right, goes to production, feedback, and then we analyze the next 4 or 5 requirements. Same process we follow. If we have 20 requirements, if we take 5 requirements at a time, then how many iteration it will need to finish the development? What is that, Sharmin? Can you repeat? No, I'm saying, let's say I have 20 requirements, and I'm like every iteration I'm taking 5 requirements. So how many iteration it will require to finish 20 iteration 20 requirements? 4, 4, right? 4 times 5 is 20. So every time if I take 5 requirements, right, 4 times 5 is 20. So it will take 4 iteration for me to finish the product. So if you take a look here, right, agile, you have, let's say you have 50 requirements. So every time if you take 10 requirements, right, every time if you take 10 requirements, or let's say first time you have sprint 1 where you have taken 10 requirements, and then you have sprint 2 you have taken 15 requirements, and then you have sprint 3 you have 10 requirements, and then you have sprint 4 you have 15 requirements. So altogether how many requirements you are covering? 10, 15, 25, 10, 15, 25, 50 requirements, and you are dividing the work in 4 sprint. Remember, each of the iteration we are calling sprint. In the sprint 1 we are developing 10 requirements, we are doing the testing, right? If there is any defect, we are fixing those defect in sprint 2, and then also we are developing 15 requirements and then going for testing, right? In sprint 3 we have previously we have developed 25 requirements, now we have another 10 requirements we are developing and testing. In sprint 4 we have 15 requirements left, we do the development and then we do the testing. So each of the iteration is called sprint. So if you develop in that way, for 50 requirements you will need 4 sprints. Okay, now come to this bigger picture. Okay, let's say that you have altogether 20 requirements. How many requirements do you have? 20. Yeah. So you have sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, sprint 4. Sprint 1 is, let's say from 15th of August till 15th of September. Okay, so in sprint 1 we have 5 requirements. What we will do, we will analyze requirements, we will design, we will be developing software, and then the verification will happen. Let's say from the verification we got 3 defects. Okay, during sprint 1 we have 5 requirements the developers have developed, and after testing we got 3 defects. Got it? So in sprint 2, let's say the plan, remember that the project manager, they prepare a plan in the beginning. So according to their plan, just replace that 2017 by 2020, and then the project starts from 15th of August. So here from 16th of September till 15th of October, right? for this sprint 2 we have 5 requirements, and remember from sprint 1 we have 3 defects, right? So what are the things those we will have to take care? 5 requirements and 3 defects. So we again, the analysis happens, designs happen, right? Development happens, and we do verification. So let's say this time we have, like this time when you do testing, what do you test? Here when you do testing, what do you test? Can anyone explain? When you,
Can you repeat the question for me, please?
what is that?
Can you repeat the question for me, please?
The question here, let's say when you do testing here in sprint 2, during sprint 2, what will you be testing?
You'll be testing everything that was made in sprint 2, or
So you are in sprint 2 we have 5 requirements. So they are developing 5 requirements, and there are 3 defects previously. So now you will be testing this whatever functionality they have developed for these 5 requirements, and these 3 defects you will be testing those, right? That is what you are saying.
no? I think you would be testing the defects, because the ones that because there's no use in testing something that you know that works, right?
So let's say that in sprint 1, in sprint 2 they have like these 5 requirements, like altogether we have 20 requirements, right? These 5 requirements they have developed in the sprint 1, and then in sprint 2 they have 5 new requirements and the 3 defects from sprint 1. So you are saying that we will be testing whatever functionality was developed for this 5 requirements. We will be testing these functionalities, and we'll be testing these defects if it is fixed. That is what you are saying. But remember this, when you do verification here, you will have to test. Remember that, let's say during sprint 1 they have developed the login functionality, the user registration functionality, right? And then in sprint 2 they have developed the statement, they have developed the customer service page. So when you test here, you will be testing the statement page and also the customer service, plus you will be testing the functionality, login and user registration that they did in the sprint 1. You will be testing those functionality as well, and that is what we are calling regression testing. When you have new functionality, right? When you have, like in the sprint 2 they have built new functionalities, is that correct? In sprint 2 they have built new functionalities. What are the new functionalities? The customer service page and the statement page, right? Is that correct? And in the previous sprint, what they have developed? They have developed the login functionality and user registration functionality, right? So when you are testing here in sprint 2, you will have to test all of the functionality those are developed in sprint 1, plus all of the functionality those are developed in sprint 2. Because when you add new functionality to the old functionality, then you have to make sure that the new functionality didn't break the previous functionality. Got it? That is what we are calling regression testing. Does it make sense? Can anyone explain what I've said?
You do the testing in the first sprint and say if everything goes well. It does not mean that everything will go well after the second sprint.
After the second sprint, because when you add new functionality, this new functionality can break the previously good functionalities. Previously working good functionality. So that's why we do testing when we test in verification level 2. We test this functionality that we are developing now, and also whatever functionality we have developed previously, we test both of the functionalities to make sure that the overall application is working fine, and that is what we are calling regression testing. Okay, in sprint 2 we have two defects, right? In sprint 1 we have developed the login functionality, the user registration functionality. In sprint 2 we have developed the statement page and the customer service page, right? In sprint 3, let's say we are going to have 5 more new requirements and 2 defects. Okay, now here in sprint 3, let's say we are going to develop the transfer functionality, right? You do transfer, ACS transfer, you do account to account transfer. So we are going to test the transfer functionality in sprint 3. We are going to develop, and there are defects from the sprint 2. So again, analysis of the requirements will happen, design and development will happen, it will be testing. Now when we are going to test, Sharmin, can you explain what we are going to test? Yeah.
You're talking about sprint 3, right?
Yeah, sprint 3.
Test all the requirements plus the 3 defects with it.
So when we are testing in sprint 3, remember that we have 2 defects from sprint 2 and we have 5 requirements. So what will you be testing?
We'll do the 5 requirements plus the 2 defects.
2 defects. Only this, or you will be testing whatever we have developed during sprint 1. During sprint 1 we have developed the user registration and login functionality. In sprint 2 we have developed and tested the customer service functionality. In sprint 3 we have developed the transfer, right? Transfer functionality, money transfer. So when you are testing in sprint 3, will you only be testing these 5 requirements and 2 defects, or all of the functionality those we have previously developed, everything will be tested in this space? What will you do?
So from my understanding, we will test all the requirements, like previous requirements plus the defects.
Right. So basically when you are testing here, we have to test all of the functionality we have developed so far from sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, because when you have added new code, when developers have added new code during sprint 3, we have to make sure that this new code is not breaking the previously developed functionalities. So that's why we are calling regression testing. We have to test everything in sprint 1, we have to test everything in sprint 2, plus we have to test everything in sprint 3. You got it? So sprint 3 was, let's say, from November 15 till December 15. And after all of the testing, we got 4 defects. We have 5 more requirements to go. Let's say in this part, we are going to test in these 5 requirements. We have, let's say, what is called in a banking application. Let's say you have what are the other things that we do in banking application? We have a deposit functionality. How do you deposit money, right? So we have this deposit thing that we have to test. So we have 5 requirements and we have defects from the previous sprint that we are going to do from December 16 to January 15, 2021. Now here again analysis, design, development will happen, and during the verification, what are we going to do? Can you explain? I will say that any of you, can you explain it?
Sorry, can you please can you repeat that question one more time?
The question, no problem. The question that I'm asking, Jaman, in sprint 4, when we are testing, what are we going to test?
Test essentially everything that was made in sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, and then finally we're going to check sprint 4. And because there's a chance that, although the everything was perfectly fine on the previous sprints, that there's a chance that the new code in sprint 4 caused a sort of disturbance to the previous one.
Previous code, there is a possibility. That's why we make sure that from sprint 1 to sprint 4, whatever functionalities are there, we test every functionalities. Now, the problem here, like this regression testing that we are saying, okay, when you are adding new functionality to an application, you have to make sure that the previous functionalities are working, and to do that, we have to test all of the functionality of the application. That is what we are calling regression testing, right? Now, let's say that in Facebook, right, there are so many pages out there, right? If you go to Facebook, you will see there are so many pages. There are you will see privacy page. There are so many pages in the left hand side. They have made a small changes to somewhere. Now, according to the testing methodology, we are saying basically we have to test everything, all of the functionality of this application. Now we have thousands of functionality in Facebook application, but they have added 4 or 5 new functionality, and because they have added this 4 or 5 new functionality, they will have to test all of this 1,000 functionality. Is that what we are saying? Right? Do you understand that we are saying that we have added 4 or 5 functionality, but we have to test all of the previous functionalities as well. That is what we are saying, right? The problem here is, if you have to test these 1,000 functionalities, remember that how many people it will need, and how much money they will have to. The testing resources are very expensive, right? They will have to spend a lot of money. They'll have to spend a lot of money. So that's why, like, instead of doing manual testing, let's say they have 1,000 test cases, right? If you have to execute 1,000 test cases, it will take a couple of months or a month, and you will have to employ so many people. So instead of employing so many manual resource, what we write programs, we write code. We will be just clicking on a button, and the code will be doing the testing, and that is what we are calling automation testing. So if you employ people who is manually going to the application and do the testing, that is what we are calling manual testing. But you can hire programmer who can write automation program, and you, let's say overnight, you click on a button during in the evening time, you sleep, in the morning you will see that 500-600 test cases are executed by the program. And most of the regression testing nowadays we do by automation, by writing code. That is what also we are going to learn in this course, automation testing, how you can write code to navigate browser. Does it make sense, guys? Okay, to give you a simple example of what is automation, how automation works, I'll give you you do not have to understand anything. You will see, like, in automation testing what happens actually. To show you what happens in automation testing, I'm going to run a simple program. Does it make sense?
Quick question for you, please. If like a vast majority of these testings are done by automation, is there a threat that sometime in the future, there won't be a need for a QA team if
okay. Okay, so
AI could do it?
So here is the thing. This automation, right? This automation program, let's say that to write the automation program, it takes a lot of effort. Like a tester like you will be writing automation program, but to develop the program, they need automation tester. Okay, even though there will be automation, there will be running a lot of thing in automation, but everywhere there are manual tester. The manual testing, like there are code things, those will be manually tested, and those things, right, those, okay, we are assuming that those are should be good, right? There is a common understanding this, although there is a risk, but our assumption is this will be fine. So those things will be run by automation. Everywhere there is manual testers, and a lot of manual testers, and on top of that there are automation testers who continuously write code, whatever test cases manual testers have written. Remember that first of all this test case will have to be written by manual testers, and then automation testers take the test cases from the manual tester, and then they automate it. You got it? So everywhere, first of all, the manual testers will have to write the manual testing code and the manual testing test cases, and the automation testers will take these test cases and automate those. Does it make sense? Yaman? Okay.
That's
So what?
reassuring right there.
Yeah. So what the automation testers does, that you are going to learn as well in this code, right? The automation testers writes code, and those codes executes overnight, right? You do not have to keep sitting with the computer. The computer will be automatically running the test cases to make sure the functionalities are working. So I'm going to show you a simple example of automation program, and basically we'll be discussing further things. So you do not have to understand this, as I said, you do not have to understand this, and here basically just for your understanding. So let's say if I run this code that I have here, right, you will see that I'm clicking on this button and my execution will be started. So okay, can you see it has started a browser, and then it has opened an application, right? Can you see it is highlighting, like, can you see it is verifying things very quickly, right? It is clicking things and then it is going to a page, and then can you see it is inputting things by itself, right? So without any manual interaction, without anything, I have written code here to input, to select different things here, and to verify different things from this page. Can you see we have highlighted different things, right, in the page? So basically everything is done by program, right? And these programs will be running overnight to verify functionality. This is what automation testing. The code does the testing. The code open the application and make sure that the drop down is working, the list is working. Does it make sense? What is automation testing? You do not have to understand the code, but what is automation testing, what it does? Mainly we do regression testing, right? When you have, let's say, added new functionalities, but these new functionalities can impact the previous functionalities. So the previous functionalities we test by automation code. Mainly for regression testing we use automation. Charmaine, are you understanding what we are explaining here? Hmm?
I think I'm a little confused. In terms of automation testing, we're trying to show us that can you just explain that last bit just once again?
Oh, the automation testing is, remember that when I'm saying, Charmaine, that you have this, where is that image that we are discussing? Let's say that this particular image, right? When we are in sprint 4, then besides testing the functionality that we have developed, we also test this, all of this other functionality, right? Now in this other functionality, let's say 95% or 99% of the functionalities will be working. Only one or two functionality might be not working because of the new deployment. Okay, so in this case, this, all of this other functionality we test by automation code. In many cases, like not all of the organization can have automation team or a efficient automation team, but many good organization will have automation team who will be writing code to test all of this previous functionality that we are bringing in the regression testing scope. They'll be writing code to test this functionality. As I said, out of this functionality, probably 95%, 99% will be working, but one or two might not be working. So those one we identify by running automation code in most cases, right? So that is what I was showing an example of how automation works. You do not, like as I said, you do not have to keep sitting in front of computer. Instead you will be pressing a button and overnight the code will be running. But to make sure that the code will be running overnight, the automation testers will have to spend months to make sure this code is working. They have to write the code, they'll have to run it multiple times to make sure that the code is working. So that is what automation testers does, and this automation testing is also a big part of this course. Is it clear now to you? Any further question?
Can you go back to Eclipse, the
Yeah, here.
the default test run one, that's where the results would be shown, right?
The results will be showing, and also there will be automatically the report will be generated. However many test case you have, test case 1, test case 2, it will be sharing here pass or fail. Can you see this test case passed? It will be there are different kind of reports that will be generated, and you can like whoever does this automation testing, they will be sending a report as well. Okay, any further question, guys?
Yes, real quick. How do we know for sure that the code that's testing our application? How do we know that there's nothing wrong with those code?
Okay. This is a good question. So if you take a look, right, in automation testing, we can like this is a programming, right? Can you see we can put if condition. If you want to check something from the application, you can put okay, if this element exists, and if this element exists, then do this. Click on this, highlight this. If something is not working, it will fail. The automation code will be failing. There are programmatic way of verifying thing, inputting thing. If something is not working, the code will be failing. And you will see, okay, you have executed 20 test cases. Out of 20 test cases, 2 test case failed, 18 passed, right? You will be looking, okay, what happened in that 2 test case? You got it? Any further question? As I said, there will be a probably half of the course we will be spending on automation testing in this QA course, right? About half of the course we will spend on automation testing. You will learn a lot of things in automation testing. Okay. Now, so let's say finally there are 7 defects. That 7 defects they will have to fix, or there will be a go no go meeting, and if they decide okay you have to fix these 7 defects, they will be fixing these 7 defects, and once these 7 defects are fixed, they will be go to the production. Or they might decide okay these defects are, let's say, a spelling mistake or minor defects. These are not basically hampering the users of the application. We will go to the production with that 7 defect, but next time when we upgrade this application, we will be fixing this 7 defect. Does it make sense how agile methodology works here?
Yeah.
So we have a key discussion today: agile methodology, waterfall methodology. Okay, agile methodology, waterfall methodology. In agile methodology, waterfall methodology, we develop everything together, and then we test everything together. We analyze we prepare the requirement. Once the requirement is prepared, design will be done. Once design is done, design is sealed. But here, as you can see, in agile methodology, the owner of the project might come, okay, oh actually you have to change this design. right? Let's say we are in sprint 3, they will come, okay, in sprint 1 you design something that's there, so you have to change something there. In agile methodology it is allowed, but in waterfall methodology it is not allowed. Does it make sense, guys? Okay, so okay, so here that is how agile versus waterfall methodology goes. I have few other images, let me quickly share those. So agile methodology, as you can see, sprint here, right? Sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, sprint 1 again. Same thing happens in every sprint, right? Build, design, plan, review, test, right? And then same thing happens in different sprint, and finally it goes to launch of the product. There is another methodology, Agile Scrum, that we are going to discuss in the upcoming session. But for now, we are not going to discuss Agile Scrum. Okay. Now, Agile versus Waterfall, right? As you can see here, that Agile is a continuous cycle, small, high-functioning, collaborating teams, multiple methodologies, flexible, continuous evaluation, customer involvement, more customer involvement. In Waterfall, sequential linear stages, upfront planning and in-depth documentation, contract negotiation, best for simple, unchanging projects, close projects manager involvement, right? So that is what Agile versus Waterfall. Can you see any question here? Yep, I'll be sending this document. Okay. Now, let's say I'm giving you a scenario. Consider the following scenario. Write your answer regarding who will do what to do the get the job done. ABC LLC needs a website. It has employees, employee X, employee Y. Okay. ABC LLC needs a website. It has employees, employee X, employee Y. Multi-tech incorporation software firm develops, right? Software. Develops software. It has the following employees: a BA, developers, and testers. Now, how, like, if you consider that image where we have, okay, Georgia State need a software and they'll go to the software development team, IBM, right? Considering this, can you write a situation who will do what? What will be the role of BA? What will be the role of developers? What will be the role of testers? This will be an assignment. Can you write a simple explanation who will do what?
Yeah, absolutely.
No. Let's say that considering the first class, just who will do what. Do not bring waterfall or anything. Even waterfall or agile, right? You saw that everywhere there is analysis, design, develop, and then testing. It is there everywhere, right? So it is not like you will be discussing basically these people, right? ABC LLC, Multitech LLC, right? Employee X, employee Y, BA, developer. Who will do what? What is their role in the team overall software development process? Okay, so I will be sending this to you so that this will be a homework for you. And then again, waterfall and agile, right? You see that plan and analysis, design, build, test, correction, test, deploy, right? Here it is a analysis plan and then design, build, test happens, and then few more requirements, same thing happens, then few more requirements, same thing happens, few more requirements, same thing happens, and finally final deployment happens, right? Same thing happens multiple times. They divide the work in small pieces and analyze, design, test, and deploy. Analyze, design, test, and deploy, right? That's all basically regarding waterfall and agile methodology. Now let's come back to the, I'll be sending all of this document that I have discussed today. Now regarding that what is called, let's say that, let me bring this apps, right? Where is my SQL? For some reason I cannot type here. I'll have to restart my computer, but let me find another way to go there. So let me go there. Let me come to this C drive, type here SQL. SQL plus. Okay, let me go there and I can find it from here. So if you have installed this already, you'll be going there, SQL plus. Now username is system. By default username is system and your password is manager. When you do this, right, can you see error? The password will expire within 7 days. Last successful login January 26. Okay. Now I'm connected here, but it is saying that, can you see now it come with that SQL tab, but it's saying that my password will be expired, but that is fine. That is fine. So what I am basically going to do here, remember guys, that we have prepared something. So we have prepared that localhost, this application, and this application, you saw that this application is bringing data from a database. This application is bringing data from a database. Does it make sense? This application is bringing from a database, data from a database like name, student ID, student name, student date of birth. All of this data are coming from database. Is that correct? If the data is not there, will it be able to bring any data? No, right? If the data is not there, it will not be able to bring it. So if the data is not there, it will not be able to bring it. But so first of all, you will have to insert data there. You will have to create the database. You will have to create the table, and then you will be able to bring data from there. So let's say in this table, how many column do I have? 3 columns: student ID, student name, date of birth, right? Is that correct? and that student ID is a number. Is that correct? What do you think? Student ID is a number. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Student name is a alphanumeric. It is a character, right? It is not a number. Date of birth is a number. Is that correct? Date of birth is a number.
Number and character.
It is a mix of number and character, right? We call it alphanumeric. We call it what? Alphanumeric. So let's say that first of all you have to create the table. And how will you create the table, right? So let's say if you go back to the SQL class, right? Let's say I'm going to create a table. Create table. This is the word that you have to mention. Then you want to give the table name. Let's say table name is my student table. My student table. And then you have to put a parenthesis, right? You have to put a parenthesis, and at the end you have to put a semicolon. And inside the parenthesis, right? Inside the parenthesis, you have a field called student ID. So you say that student ID, right? And what is the type here? It is a number, right? You say number. And as you can see, all of the student IDs are 3-digit, right? You say how many digit and then put a comma. So I have student ID. First of all, what is the name of my column? Student ID. And then what is the type of the data? It is a number. And what is the maximum size of the data? 3, right? What is the maximum size of the data? 3. Now come to the next field, student name. So I'm going to say stud name. And what is the type of the data here? Character. So when it is character, then we say varchar 2. And what is the maximum size of the student name? Let's say the maximum size we have is 25. We say 25. And then you have the last one, date of birth. Let's say we have another field, DOB, and DOB again is alphanumeric, varchar, right? You put varchar 2. And what is the maximum size of the date of birth? 228, 224, 4 and 4, 8, and these two forward slashes. So altogether 10. You put 10 here, right? And then now you see, if you press enter here, table created. Okay, now what is the table that we have created? The name of the table is my student table. Now if you write a command, describe my student table. Oh, it is saying that student, my object, my student table does not exist. Why I am not able to see the student table? Let me put a semicolon. It is saying that my student table does not exist. Can anyone help me? Like, what is the problem here?
There's no data that's inputted.
Now, if there is a data issue, then it will not say that the table doesn't exist. So this is the command I'm trying to execute. Can you see anything wrong here? We have a spelling mistake here. Okay, so now you see that we have in this table, we have student ID, student name, DOB. Student ID is a number type data. Student name is a bar chart type data where we have 25 characters. DOB is a bar chart 2, we have 10 characters, right? Does it make sense? So first of all, if you want to create a table, your statement is create table. You have to give a name, and then you have to put a parenthesis starting from here, ending from here. Finally, you have to put a semicolon, and then inside there you have to put each of the column description. First column is student ID, and it will contain only numeric data, and each of the data is 3 digits. Second column is student name. It is a variable character. So the data type here is variable character to these data types are Oracle has already have these 3 data type with it. Variable character 2, and then number. And how many, like you put a number in the parentheses depending on what will be the size of your data. Our assumption was the name will be maximum 25 characters and the date of birth will be 10 characters. Now, so that is how you create table, right? That is how you create table. How do you create table, right? This is the statement. That is how you create table. And if you want to see how your table look like, what you have created, what you do, you execute this command, describe my student table, and then you will be able to see, okay, what is the description of the table. Now if you want to, if you execute select star from my student table, what do you see? No rows selected because we do not have any data. Does it make sense? In this table we have just created the table, but we do not have any data. Is that correct? So how will you insert data into the table? Insert into my student table, right? Insert into my student table and then use these values. Now put the values here. First one is number 111. Second one is name. Name will always be in the single quotation. Name is Javed. Birth will be always in the single quotation. And then you have date of birth. His date of birth is 05/07/2015, right? Now can you see one row created? Now if you execute that command again, select star from my student table. Now what do you see? Student ID 111, student name Javed, DOB. Can you see everything that you have input? Okay, so we are almost done, but we are going to discuss more in our next session. I have just shown how you can create table, how you can insert data into it, and on top of that we will be discussing more. Our time is over as well. We will be discussing more in our net table and that document, and we'll talk again on Saturday. Okay, Jaman, are you good up to this? Jaman, are you still there? Okay. All right, guys. Thank you. Bye.